In the quiet village of Yumis, where the rooster's crow chased away the night and the palm trees danced to the tune of the Harmattan breeze, there lived a young girl called Adanna. Her mother had died when she was a baby, leaving her in the hands of her father, who loved her like the only treasure the gods spared him. But as fate would have it, Okik remarried a woman named Obianochu, whose heart was as cold as the river at dawn. On the day she crossed into their compound, people whispered, the leopard does not change its spots. Anna, only 12 then, watched Obianochu's heavily painted face and sharp eyes and felt a shiver she could not explain. And from that day her life began to twist into a tale she never imagined. "Mama, will you teach me how to pound yam?" Adanna asked one afternoon, her voice soft as she clutched the pestle. Obianochu did not bother to look up from where she sat polishing her toenails. "Is it my duty to teach a child whose mother could not stay alive to do so?" she sneered, her tone slicing the girl's heart. Adanna bit her lip to stop the tears that threatened to disgrace her. She had learned early that tears only amused Obianochu, so she turned to the mortar and struggled with the yam herself. The pestle was heavy, and each time it slammed into the yam, she imagined it was landing on her stepmother's wicked words. The neighbors often heard the pounding and wondered what a child could have done to deserve so much cruelty. At dawn, while other children still lay curled in sleep, Adanna was already fetching water from the stream, her bare feet numb on the cold earth. Obianochu would stand by the doorway, arms folded, barking orders. "Do not return until you fill all these pots." Sometimes Adanna wondered if her father was blind, but Okik worked in the farmlands from dawn till dusk, and Obianochu wore sweetness like a mask whenever he was home. "How is my Adanna?" he would ask, and Obianochu would stroke her hair. "She is well, my husband, such a good girl." But the moment Oki's footsteps faded, the mask would fall away, and the wolf returned to bear its fangs. One evening, when the moon climbed lazily into the sky, Adanna sat by the fire, roasting maize for supper. Her stomach growled. She had not eaten all day. Obianochu swept in, her eyes glinting like a hunting cat's. "Who gave you permission to roast that maize?" she snapped. I was hungry," Adanna stammered. Before she could blink, Obianochu snatched the maize from her ham and flung it into the fire. Flames devoured the cob as Adanna watched helplessly. "Next time you steal food, I will make sure your fingers taste the fire," Obianochu hissed. That night, Adanna cried into her mat, wishing her mother's spirit would come to take her away. Weeks passed and Adanna grew thinner. Her cheeks hollowed and her dresses hung on her like old rags. But her spirit, though battered, refused to die. She began to find small joys like the way the moonlight kissed her skin when she crept out to sit by her mother's grave, or how the crickets sang lullabies when all else failed. One evening, as she poured libation on the mound where her mother rested, she whispered, "Mama, if you can hear me, please send help." She did not know her whispered prayer had already traveled on the wind, carried straight to the ears of Nena, her late mother's closest friend. Nena was a woman feared and respected. Some called her a witch, others said she had the gift of seeing what eyes could not. When she heard of Adanna's plight, she wrapped her red wrapper tightly around her waist and marched to Oki's compound. Obianochu met her at the gate, her smile stretched thin. "Ah, Nena, to what do we owe this visit?" Nena did not return the smile. Her eyes swept the compound, noting the unwashed pots, the cracked gourd, and finally the trembling figure of Anna peeking from behind the hut. "I have come to see Adanna," she said flatly. Obianochu's face tightened, but she stepped aside. Some spirits were too big to fight. "My child," Nena murmured as she held Adanna's thin shoulders, "your mother's blood runs in you. Do not forget it." She pressed something into Adanna's hand, a small gourd sealed with cowrie shells. "When your sorrow becomes too heavy, break this gourd," she whispered. Obianochu watched them with narrow eyes, but she dared not ask questions. Nena turned to her and said in a voice soft as silk, yet heavy as thunder, "Remember, what you do to this girl will return to you sevenfold." With that, she turned and left, her footsteps echoing like a warning. Obianochu spat on the ground. "Old witch," she muttered, but inside, a shiver curled around her spine. That night, Obianochu searched Adanna's mat, hoping to find the gourd and destroy it. But Adanna, wise beyond her years, had hidden it under the roots of the obono tree behind the compound. In her dreams, her mother came, her face glowing like sunrise. "Be patient, my daughter," she whispered. "The gourd will know when your time has come." When Adanna woke, she felt a strange calm she had never known. Even when Obianoju poured dirty water on her the next morning, she simply wiped her face and moved on. This quiet defiance unsettled Obianoju more than any rebellion. One morning, Okik returned early from the farm, clutching his back in pain. "Ah, my waist!" he groaned. Adanna rushed to help him sit. Obianoju stood with her hands on her hips, making no move to assist. "Perhaps you should go to the dibia," Adanna suggested gently. "Nonsense," Obianoju snapped. "He is only tired." But that night, Okik's groans grew louder, and before dawn, he could no longer rise from his mat. "It is witchcraft," Obianoju wailed for the neighbors to hear. "This girl has cursed her own father." Adanna stared at her horrified. "I would never," she cried. But the villagers, ever eager for gossip, began to murmur. Obianoju saw her opportunity. "If you want him to live," she declared, "you must leave this house at once. The gods are angry with you." Adanna looked to her father, who could only moan in confusion. Tears blurred her sight as she packed her few clothes in a raffia bag. As she stepped out into the cold dawn, she glanced back one last time. The house she had called home now looked like the mouth of a giant beast that had finally spat her out. With no place to go, she turned towards Nena's compound, her feet bleeding, but her spirit strangely light. She did not know the gourd under the obono tree had begun to hum. Nina took her in without question. "Dry your tears," she said as she washed Adanna's wounds. "The gods have seen everything." For days, Adanna rested, eating proper meals for the first time in months. Slowly, her cheeks filled out and her eyes regained their brightness. News came that Okik's sickness had worsened. Some said Obianoju spent her nights burning herbs and muttering incantations. "If she truly believed you were the cause," Nena said one evening as they peeled cassava, "why is he not recovering now that you are gone?" Adanna had no answer. All she knew was that her heart ached for her father. One moonless night, as the crickets chirped and the wing hen sighed through the thatch, Adanna woke to a voice calling her name. "Adannak, Adannak." She sat up, her heart thudding. At the doorway stood a woman draped in white, her face hidden by a veil. "Follow me," the voice commanded, and though fear pricked her skin, Adanna rose. She followed the figure past the sleeping village, past the stream that glittered like spilled stars, until they reached the obono tree. There, the woman stopped. "The time has come," she said, and her veil lifted. It was her mother's face, radiant with love. "Break the gourd." Adanna fell to her knees, sobbing. "Mama, I am afraid." Her mother knelt beside her, her touch wore the sunrise. "Fear is the chain they used to bind you," she whispered. "Break it." With trembling hands, Adanna dug under the tree and retrieved the gourd. It pulsed in her palm as if alive. Taking a deep breath, she raised it high and dashed it against the roots. The gourd shattered, releasing a gust of wind so strong it bent the trees. In that moment, she felt something leave her years of pain, of silence, of helplessness. The air was still. Her mother was gone, but the dawn had begun to blush along the horizon. Back in Okik's compound, Obianoju woke up with a start. A strange heaviness pressed on her chest. She tried to rise but found she could not move. A voice filled the room, deep and echoing. "You have eaten bitterness, and now you will drink it." The pots crashed from their shelves. The firewood split in two. Obianoju screamed, but no heard her. Outside, the neighbors saw smoke rising from the hut, though no fire burned. By morning, Okik was sitting up for the first time in weeks, looking around in bewilderment. But Obianoju lay on her mat, her eyes wide with terror. When word reached Nina's compound that Okik had recovered, she turned to Adanna and nodded. "Justice does not always shout," she said. "Sometimes it whispers." Adanna returned home with cautious steps. She found her father standing by the doorway, tears running down his cheeks. "My daughter," he sobbed, gathering her in his arms. For the first time in her life, she felt truly safe. Obianoju watched them from her mat, her limbs frozen, her mouth twisted as if mid-curse. The dibia later declared that she would remain that way until she confessed all her evils. But her pride sealed her lips. As the days passed, Okik grew stronger. He apologized again and again, each word washing a little more hurt from Adanna's heart. "I should have seen," he wept. She shook her head gently. "We see what we are ready to see," she replied. Obianoju's relatives came to take her away, but no one in the village pitied her. People said she had plucked the feathers from her own wings. When they carried her out on a mat, her eyes darted to Adanna. but there was no power left in them, only a hollow rage that would haunt her forever. Adanna cleaned the compound with fresh palm fronds, scrubbing away the cobwebs of sorrow. She replanted her mother's herbs by the kitchen window. As she worked, she felt her mother's presence, like a warm hand on her back. Oki often watched her in silence, marveling at her strength. The neighbors, who once pitied her, now greeted her with respect. Nenena was right, one elder said, as she carries her mother's spirit. Sometimes, Adanna caught herself smiling for no reason. The darkness had not broken her, it had only taught her to shine brighter. One evening, as the sun melted into the earth, Nena came to visit. She sat with Adanna under the ogbono tree, their laughter drifting through the twilight. "Will you stay here now?" Nena asked. Adanna nodded. "This is my home." Nena's eyes softened. "And you, my child, are no longer a victim." Adanna looked up at the sky, the stars winking back at her. She thought of the gourd, of her mother's face, of the wind that had freed her. "No," she agreed. "I am not a victim. I am my mother's daughter." When the festival of New Yam came, Adanna danced in the village square, her wrapper swirling like fire. Children followed her, clapping in delight. Okik watched with pride, knowing he had nearly lost this treasure. As the drums beat, Adanna felt every sorrow, every tear, every moment of fear lift off her shoulders. She was whole again, and in the crowd, she thought she glimpsed her mother's smile among the faces. For a heartbeat, she closed her eyes, letting the music carry her higher than any grief could ever reach. Years later, people still told the tale of the gourd that refused to break until the right moment. They spoke of Adanna as the girl who turned her pain into power, who proved that no darkness could swallow a spirit that chose to rise. And on quiet nights, when the wind rustled through the obono tree, children claimed they heard a woman's voice singing a lullaby. They said it was the spirit of Adanna's mother, watching over the daughter who had become a legend in Umuatu, the girl who learned that the greatest strength often grows from the deepest wounds.
Please like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more exciting, lovely, and interesting stories.